There's a great deal of interest nowadays because the public is becoming more and more aware that doctors aren't helping them. They're using drugs and chemicals and poisons and radiation, and it doesn't heal anything. The public is more and more hungry to learn and understand what they can do to help themselves. And there are a lot of DVDs, there's a lot of information on Gerson therapy, which gives them that capability. That's exciting that the public is waking up, because they've been brainwashed. Oh, the doctors know best, you have to do what the doctors say, and so on. As it is, actually, doctors treat chronic degenerative disease symptoms. They never heal anything. And if you don't heal, the symptoms worsen, and the drugs the doctors pass out have side effects, and people just get more and more ill and are more and more miserable, and they're not getting well. And the public is waking up that they are being bamboozled, and the doctors are drug pushers. Doctors are not the answer. Doctors are also taught in medical school that chronic degenerative disease is incurable by definition. And the public is beginning to understand. And they're looking for something better, something valuable, something they can do for themselves. And over the years, they have become acquainted, for instance, with Jay Cordish and juicing and the juice machine. And they're beginning to understand that if they are able to nourish the body thoroughly, to nourish the body's defenses with nutrition, not dead, rotten food and chemicals and pesticides and fungicides that are contained in everything, and the foods that are damaged by processing, and they're valueless, and they are not able to nourish the body's defenses. The body has what Dr. Gerson called a natural healing mechanism. If it didn't, every time you cut yourself, you would have an infection and die. The body is normally organized in order to heal. And Dr. Gerson was definitely of the opinion that only thing you have to do is restore and rebuild the body's healing mechanism, which is being suppressed and damaged by the chemicals and the pesticides and the fungicides and the poison in the water, the fluoride that they put in the water and things like that. These things poison and damage the body's defenses. Actually, when the defenses are in order, your immune system, your enzyme system, your hormone system, your essential organs like the liver and the lungs and the brain and the heart, if those organs are in order, cancer is impossible. You cannot have cancer. The body has too many powerful defenses, so that cancer is, first of all, completely avoidable, and secondly, even in advanced situations, totally curable by restoring the body's ability to reactivate this healing mechanism. We see the capability of the body of restoring its healing mechanism by using the right foods. Like if you have a beautiful car, a Maserati, a really fancy car, you wouldn't put sugar water in the tank. Essentially, that's how we treat our bodies. We have this wonderful mechanism, very complex and very complete, and really working with all the organ systems together to keep us well. But we treat it like it's a piece of garbage. We put nothing but garbage in it. And that's not going to maintain the body's capability of healing. Chemotherapy does not restore the body's ability to heal. It poisons it further. It weakens the immune system. Okay, but they make huge money on it. And the pharmaceutical companies pay doctors to prescribe chemotherapy. That was even written up in the Journal of the American Medical Association. So the public is waking up to this capability of the body to heal itself by giving it the right nutrients. And that's what Dr. Gerson has developed to a fine art, science. It works. And we see even terminally ill patients, not just with cancer or heart disease or diabetes or obesity or arthritis or rheumatoid arthritis or ulcerative colitis. You could mention 1,500 chronic diseases. Fresh organic nutrients is the only thing the human body needs to work on. The human body is designed not to work on white pasta. It has no vitamins, minerals, enzymes, no nutrition. And not only that, why, you know, even for people who eat vegetables or eat vegetarian, if it's damaged with toxins, with pesticides and fungicides, and if it's processed and you pour salad dressing on it, loaded with chemicals and with salt and with flavor enhancers and with all kinds of chemicals to make it attractive and tasty, those things don't nourish the body. They poison these very systems that we must nourish with good living nutrients, good living poison-free nutrients. That's exactly what I eat. I eat fresh foods, organic foods exclusively. I eat vegetarian exclusively. I drink fresh living juices with lots of living minerals, enzymes, vitamins, the kind the body's cells and tissues are able to absorb and utilize. And, you know, if you sometimes talk to a plumber who's cleaning a septic tank, he'll tell you how many hundreds of pills he finds in there. Pills that people swallow. Well, sometimes you can still read the logo of the company who made it. You can swallow pills you think you're getting nutrients. You're not. It goes right through you. It can't be used by the body. But the fresh, living, organic, healthy foods and the raw juices that are rich in the very nutrients that the good Lord put on the earth for us, those the body can use and keep its defenses going.
Charlotte, talk about the Gerson therapy and how it came about.
It's kind of a long story. My father was a doctor. He went through the medical schools and, you know, residency, internship, residency and all, and was trained just like all other doctors, diagnose and then treat the symptom, and, you know, there's drugs and so on. However, all of this was before the First World War. And he had one great big difference from others. He was suffering terribly from migraine headaches. Apparently hereditary. His mother had the migraine headaches, and by the time he was through residency, he was sometimes laid up in bed with terrible migraines and eye damage and hearing damage and all that for 2 and 3 days a week. And he begged his doctors, teachers, professors, what am I going to do? And they all referred him back to the books, and the books said, nothing you can do, and, you know, just learn to live with it. But I can't live with it. Well, when you get to be 55, you'll feel better. But I'm 25. Okay, so he decided he wasn't going to live this way, so he would have to find some way of healing himself, or he didn't want to live. So he started to search. By this time he had an MD degree. And he looked up other doctors and professors and teachers, and he subscribed to medical journals also in other languages and had them translated and studied and studied and tried and tried. Finally, after a long time, year or two or more, he ran across one little item, and the item said that there was a woman, apparently in Italian, a little Italian magazine, who had changed her diet and was better. Diet? Nobody told him about diet. Never learned in school about diet. Diet was in the kitchen, you know, the cook. Anyway, but he was so discouraged with everything else, he thought he might as well try. And he started to think about diet. And he thought about milk, and every baby can handle milk. He certainly couldn't be allergic to it, and he tried it. He was just as sick as ever. And then it really occurred to him that nowhere in nature, animals, once they're weaned, ever drink milk. Certainly not milk from another species. So he decided to do what our kind of physical ancestors do. He decided to try vegetarian food. Living in Germany, apples were available any season. So he lived on nothing but apples for a little while. Raw apples, apple sauce, apple juice, baked apples, cooked apples, all kinds. And he was fine. Starting from that information, he would add one thing after another. So he worked out, piece by piece by piece, adding one thing after another, what he called his migraine diet. And it worked for him. When he stayed with it, he was fine, no more pain. So a little later, when he finally settled in his practice, his own practice, he had a shingle out, and the shingle read internal and nerve diseases. He had done the completion of his treatment of his training by one of the top neurologists of Europe, a man by the name of Ottfried Förster, in Breslau. Meantime came the First World War, so he was working with Förster in Breslau during the first years of the World War. And that's why his single read internal and nerve disease. He was specialized. One day a patient comes to him and complains of migraine headaches, and he says, well, there's no cure, but I had migraine and I'm doing this, 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 and this. Why don't you try it? It's not written up anywhere, but it works for me. Anyway, the patient comes back 3 or 4 weeks later and says, Dr. Gerson, my migraines are gone, but I also had skin tuberculosis. That's called lupus vulgaris. It's not like the lupus erythematosus. It's called lupus vulgaris, skin tuberculosis, and the man who discovered it and found it was incurable got the Nobel Prize. So my father said, no, it's an incurable disease. And, but the patient produced laboratory reports that the lesions he had on his arms or wherever did indeed have tubercle bacilli. My father couldn't understand the relationship of a tuberculosis infection and migraine headaches. But he wanted to know. This was something entirely new. So he said, look, my shingle reads internal and nerve diseases, and I don't see skin problems like that. Do you know anybody else, rather rare kind of disease? And the man said, oh, yes. I had a lot of people, friends in the hospital, and they all had the same problem. Send me some. I'll treat them free of charge. I just want to know. Well, that's what happened. He treated them free of charge, and it worked. This came to the ears of the most famous lung tuberculosis specialist in Europe by the name of Sauerbruch in Munich. My father was in a city in northwestern Germany called Bielefeld, Westphalia, where I was born too. And Sauerbruch was questioning couldn't believe this. So he asked for my father to come to him. He was a big professor. Okay, and my father, in those days you didn't fly. This was before World War I or right after. And so my father took the train, went on down there 8 hours, and discussed this with Sauerbruch, and Sauerbruch said, okay, we'll test it out. And I'll get a bunch of patients together and give them the therapy you proposed, and we'll see. He got together 450 patients, and I don't know if you're familiar with this. It's not a disease nowadays that you see much of, but I remember as a child seeing pictures and seeing patients with part of their nose missing from tuberculosis, or ears missing, or big lesions in their face. Of course, it didn't see the rest of the body, and so on. And Sauerbruch put together 450 advanced tuberculosis, skin tuberculosis cases, and he said, Gerson, if you can only stop one of them, the advance of the disease, I'll believe every word you say. Well, after a while, 446 recovered out of the 450. And Sauerbruch was just out of them. Besides, he was the big professor, so it had his name when he published. Okay? And he then continued using this therapy for tuberculosis. But my father wasn't satisfied with skin tuberculosis. So my father was called to a station, a large station of lung tuberculosis in Berlin. And he went there, and he started to treat patients there. And sure enough, the lung tuberculosis responded, but something else happened, and that changed everything. He discovered that a lot of those patients had other problems. Besides lung tuberculosis, some had kidney damage, some had asthma, some had high blood pressure or low blood pressure, various other diseases, and they too disappeared. And that's when he began to understand that he was no longer treating a disease, that he was restoring the body's ability to heal itself. And when he developed this further, he found that virtually any chronic degenerative disease was curable, and then he still had to make some alterations before he was able to cure advanced cancer. But he could do that too, by restoring the body's defense.
Merci de votre attention.